No, Rob, wake up.
No, TV's Rob is unwoke. TV's Rob is unwoke.
He's unwoke.
Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Its continuing mission:
to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before.
Hey, how you doing? It's TV's Rob. This is TV's Rob is Unwoke, and today we're looking back at a little bit of television history. Look, the geeks, the nerds, the fanboys, pretty much anybody that's plugged into pop culture at all can always remember Star Wars Day. You know, May the 4th be with you. Off of that clever slogan, May the Force be with you. But September 8th is actually a more important day in sci-fi, geekdom, nerdism, whatever you want to call it. Now, why is September 8th important? Why is that such a big day? Why is that more important than Star Wars Day? Well, it's Star Trek Day. That's right. 55 years ago, September 8th, 1966, Gene Roddenberry's Wagon Train to the Stars made its television debut, setting into motion, without even knowing, a cultural phenomenon that would last more than half century later. Through various spin-off television shows, various movies, products, you name it, they've been everywhere. Star Trek has covered the spectrum. It's even gotten a reboot movie series from J.J. Abrams. How awesome is that? Well, on this episode of TV's Rob is Unwoke, had a couple of people come on and talk a little Star Trek. You may know them. Stephen Avery and Michael NP1701 join me to rate the Star Trek series from worst to best. And if you know anything about Star Trek, you might be shocked at where some of these series landed. For me, I'm always going to be a TNG guy. The original series with Kirk, Spock, and McCoy holds a very special place in my heart. I'm also a big fan of Lower Decks. Discovery could still kiss it, though. That show is trash. But find out where we all stand on the 9 different series of Star Trek, not including the new one coming out from Nickelodeon called Star Trek Prodigy. I don't think anybody wants to actually watch that, but if I'm wrong, let me know. I'm happy to be proven wrong. Now, I could sit here and I could tell you what the show meant to me and what type of impact it had on my life and blah, blah, blah. Stuff that you probably don't even care about. So, I'm not going to do that because I don't wanna. Instead, let's get on with the show.
He's unwoke.
Every Star Trek series ranked according to critics. And I love lists because they're pretty much easy. And
I can already tell you the list is wrong. Anytime
Okay.
it says according to critics, it's wrong.
All right. Well, that's that's exactly what I was going for here. So I'm going to get now, of course, it's just so 9 series. And I'm just going to give you the countdown from 9 to 1. Number 9, Star Trek Enterprise. Number 8, Star Trek Lower Decks. Voyager at 7. TNG at 6. Discovery at 5. The original series at 4. Picard at number 3. DS9 at 2. And the number 1 series, according to critics, the animated series. So, just starting off, Stephen, where do you want to? What's your biggest issue with this list?
Well, first off, my biggest issue with the list is I think I'm about to get your podcast banned for life because those critics need to shoot themselves.
All right. Well, yeah. If it gets
right.
canceled, it gets canceled. I mean, it's been a hell of a run.
First off, the animated series, there's no way that's number one series of all of them.
But 94% of critics said.
I don't care. This is why I never pay attention to critics, right? 99% of the time, if I'm looking up a movie and the critics hate it, I want to go see that movie because I'm guaranteed to love it. That's my rule of thumb right there. If the critics hate it, I'm going to go watch it because I'm going to love it. So critics don't know what they're talking about. That is my number one rule. So animated series, no chance in hell that it's actually the number one. I guarantee you, if you ask Star Trek fans, they're all going to laugh. Right?
All right, Michael, what's your biggest issue? Do you have an issue with this ranking? Do you agree with it?
Oh, no. But I think putting the animated series at number one might be more of a function of nostalgia, because these critics are about the age where they would have watched that as children. You know, I grew up watching The Next Generation, so I put that much higher than I do some of the other series. So it may just be a function of that's what brought you in.
All right. So if we were going to rank these series ourselves, what would be your absolute, what would be number 9 for you, Michael?
Well, I haven't seen Discovery, but everything that I've heard about it, it's probably going to be my bottom of the list.
All right. Well,
just
at least you own up to not having seen it. So,
right.
You can offer that as a caveat. Steven, what about you? What's your bottom of the barrel?
Oh, you know what it is, and you know why it is.
But go ahead and tell us anyways.
So, for me, it's definitely Discovery. And I mean, I've only watched the one episode. It was absolutely horrible. It was horrible writing. It was horrible attempt at reinventing things. It was just whoever was in charge of dealing with this series knows that they're like J.J. Abrams trying to do Star Trek movies. They know nothing about Star Trek. They just want to throw out something that does what they want to do, and they want to attach a label to it to attract people.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because the people involved with Discovery and all of the new Trek on Paramount Plus now are from the J.J. Abrams crew. So, you're not too far off there.
And exactly. So they're making their story that has absolutely nothing to do with actual Trek, but they're going to slap a label on it because people will watch it, and they'll accept it if they're idiots. I mean, that's my view on it. But yeah, Discovery is definitely number 9.
For me, Discovery is definitely number 9. Having watched all of it.
I'm sorry.
I know. And it goes back to my theory. If I watch this, yeah, happy to do it. My theory on it is, if I watch it, then it helps improve their streaming numbers, which guarantees in some way, shape, or form there will be other series to follow. But I want to gouge my eyes out every episode. I want to stab my brain with forks and just turn it off. But I watch it and suffer through it, because now I'm thinking, okay, now I got to know, how are they going to screw this up now? A series that decides to launch its main title ship into the future, well beyond any canonized events in Star Trek, still creates plot holes for the stuff that they were leaving behind.
And that's an issue that I had with several of the series. Discovery and Enterprise both.
Don't jump too far ahead now.
No,
go ahead.
I'm just saying, as an example for something that's going to affect how I did the ratings. Discovery and Enterprise both overused time travel. Deep Space Nine, beat the dead horse with the mirror universe. So for me, it's like whoever was involved in writing that stuff whenever they were running out of ideas or they needed to fill something in, it's like, hey, we're going to throw this in there. We're going to throw this in there to fill a hole till we get to the spot that we actually want to be at. And it's just like there was no need for any of that stuff. If you're running out of ideas, maybe that's an indication that you need to, end your story and try something else.
Yeah, for me, the crux of everything that is wrong with Discovery is you have when they're making casting decisions, they will send out the release and they'll say Star Trek cast first non-gender binary actor.
Who cares?
Exactly. I mean, there was a whole species in TNG of asexual beings or non-gender binary beings, and Riker still figured out how to have sex with one. I mean, that's talent.
Yes.
So
very much so.
I don't understand. And then your main character, the only one that people can really identify and tell you anything about, is a murderous, traitorous, mutinous character who, through the time of the series, has now been promoted to captain of the title ship Discovery. Showing that if you are black and commit crimes, you too can captain a starship.
Especially a starship that's more advanced than the ships that are coming 10 years later.
Oh, no, they fixed that with their version of the Enterprise.
Which, again, is another reason why it is number 9 on my list.
Yeah, I felt the show was doomed from the get-go when, in the first season, the very last episode, you show the USS Enterprise NCC 1701 Constitution class with Captain Pike. Thinking you already don't have a leg to stand on. That would be like the show Enterprise having Spock make an appearance randomly, meaning that you had no leg to stand on. At least Enterprise didn't do that.
Spock wasn't even alive then, I don't think.
Oh, he would have been a young guy. Because in Discovery, Spock is there. In fact, he's the science officer on the Enterprise. And Vulcans are long-lived. So,
which is still, like, what, another 100, 200 years after Enterprise?
Come on. Spock is forever.
So,
am I right? All right. So number 8. What would be the next to worst series on your list? Let's go back to you, Johnny, going legit.
Oh gosh, I tend to rank Enterprise higher, but considering the choices I have and the clumsiness with which it was ended, I think I have to put that at number 8. And not necessarily by they didn't fall on their own sword, put it that way. They were given a raw deal with the ending. The fact that the last episode was an episode of holodeck theater instead of an actual closing of the story sort of was a slap in the face of those of us who actually liked the show, for one thing. And then ending the episode by saying, I've heard the speech. Let's turn this off and leave. That's another, like, 2 slaps in the face of people that are interested in the history of the Federation.
All right, fair enough. I totally agree with your rundown of the series finale. That should have been a 2-parter. There shouldn't have been overlap with a non-consequential episode or season 7 series, episode of TNG. I mean, yeah, I totally agree with you there. Steven's over here making notes, so.
No, I'm just trying to organize my thoughts. So trying to list the series in order so I can remember exactly what I'm talking about. For me, I think my number 8, unfortunately, See, that one's kind of a difficult one for me. I would probably have to go with the animated series just because it never really carried enough to keep me going. So, I mean, it was a great attempt at attempting to keep the series going. It just never brought enough to the table for me. So,
I want to put the animated series in number 8. One, because I've seen it, wasn't a huge fan. I will say that it was awesome that you got to see just how versatile James Doohan was in terms of his voice acting, because he did so many of the characters on that show. And you actually really get to, I think that's where they really started tying in Kirk's middle name, Tiberius. Because if you remember in the original series, they actually had one where it said James R. Kirk or James S. Kirk as on a headstone, James R. Kirk. So to finally get the middle name thing situated and settled on was good. But I wasn't a huge fan of that animated series. I could be completely wrong. Maybe I need to go back and watch it again, maybe with a fresh set of eyes, but I wasn't totally sold on that series. It seemed like clunky Saturday morning television, where I would rather watch Looney Tunes. You know what I'm saying?
Agreed.
probably.
So that leaves us with Lower Decks, Voyager, TNG, DS9, Picard in the original series. So, number 7. Who wants to go first? Take it away.
Yeah, let's maintain consistency. Mike.
Let's see. Well, again, I haven't seen Lower Decks. I've heard good things about it, so I'm not in too much of a hurry to add this to the list yet.
All right, so you're going to go with Lower Decks?
No,
Or
I
you
think
could
number
just say,
7
you know
for me
what?
would have to be the animated series. I know
Okay.
that's anticlimactic after all that waiting, but the animated series for me, it was Star Trek Super Friends
All right.
to me. It seemed like patterned after the Super Friends cartoon, and the stories they're kind of interesting, but it wasn't really anything we hadn't seen in the original series.
All right. I did like the fact that they were able to introduce more aliens, since you didn't have to pay for makeup and everything and prosthetics.
Right.
All right, Steven, you're number 7.
So my number 7 is Deep Space Nine. So.
Oh, wow. Am I the only one shocked by that?
I mean, for me, like I said,
shocked.
they massively overused the mirror universe for me. And I mentioned this before when we were talking Star Trek. To me, it felt way too close to like a soap opera, and things really didn't pick up till much later in the series. And for me, if it hadn't been for intentionally looking for it, I never would have gotten far enough into the series to really find any of that stuff. So it was pretty much like you started doing some good stuff, but it came too late in the series for me to even understand half of what happened before it. So it was for me, it was just not a really good. There was a lot they could have done there that they never did. So
all right, okay, all right. Hey,
I mean, big example. You're in the middle of the Dominion War. Biggest war the Federation's fought in the longest time. And who do you not see ever in the war. The Federation's flagship, the biggest, baddest ship that they're supposed to have at the time, which at that time was the Enterprise E. You're not going to. The Sovereign class was the first time in a while that they built a combat cruiser, because that's what the E is. The E is a combat cruiser. It's not an exploration cruiser like the Galaxy class is. It's a combat cruiser, and they don't bother to say, hey, maybe we should have this in there. We should have a couple actual combat cruisers going at this. Most of their actual combat-oriented cruisers are the older styles, like the Excelsior, the Miranda class. Yeah, they had the Akiras in there, which those were built specifically because of the Borg. But other than that, they don't really have a whole lot of actual combat-oriented stuff in there. It's all stuff that's, yeah, it's big and powerful because you got to be able to protect yourself, but we're more exploration stuff. They don't have, just stuff like that really sticks with me.
All right. Okay. No, I could definitely see that. My number 7, this is going to be kind of shocking. I don't know. You guys might actually totally agree with me putting it this low on the list. Picard. And the reason for that is I don't like the development they did on Jean-Luc Picard, because Picard never struck me as the man who would just take his ball and run home. When he doesn't get his way, he's just like, you know what, screw you guys, I'm going home. I've never thought him to be that type of person. The man was assimilated by the Borg and still came back for more. The man faced his own clone and still came back for more. The man had to deal with a future version of himself, still came back for more. And to take his ball and run home and just basically go into hiding at Chateau Picard just doesn't strike me as what Jean-Luc Picard would have done. And then this is, more like teenage Rob talking, but what they did to 7 of 9 pisses me off to no end. Oh my God. You do not take perfection like 7 of 9. I mean, 7 of 9 was always like awestruck by that Omega particle and Voyager because it's supposed to be the definition of perfection. No. She was the definition of perfection. And to make her, I guess, maybe by the end of the first season of that series, and having her slum it with Michelle Hurd, no. No.
I'm not going to argue with you about 7 of 9 because, I mean, I don't necessarily think it was a bad move, but it wasn't a congruous move, if that makes sense.
There was nothing indicating that was in the cards.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't make sense doing the shift. I don't have a problem with the shift per se, but it didn't make sense. That's really the only problem I had with it. The point you made about Picard, I kind of agree with, but I see it slightly different in that he got assimilated by the Borg and came back. Those things that you mentioned, most of that stuff was things that happened to him and really dealt only with him. Whereas the event that drove him from Starfleet was something that you could see coming from, an insurrection was where you really saw it starting. Starfleet had a fundamental shift in the way that they handled things. First they're agreeing to completely uproot an entire society just because, they wanted to twist the Prime Directive and get a hold of this radiation that could save billions of lives. Why should it be wasted on just these 600 people? And then going on, something bad happens to Starfleet, and instead of addressing that situation while also handling another one, they just said, you know what? We're done. Y'all can go fuck yourselves. We just got attacked. We're going to curl up in a little ball and, be frightened little children while your entire society dies. And that, I think, is what drove Picard to say, I cannot work with this organization. You are not truly Starfleet. You are not truly the defenders of the Federation. I cannot work with you because you do not stand up for the ideals that you did. So, that is where I kind of disagree with you on that. So not to say that you're wrong per se, but just that's the perspective I have on it.
Michael, what about you? Do you agree, disagree?
Well, there's two things come to mind. First of all, he was also absorbed by the Nexus and didn't even for an instant consider staying there. But on the flip side, there was a lot going into this decision, it seemed like. And I've only seen, so I didn't know that, about 7 of 9. That hurts me a lot.
Spoiler.
So, yeah.
Spoilers.
Because I haven't gotten to the point yet in the series where her character's introduced again. But
well, then I won't even talk about what
also
happened at the end. The
Okay,
other
no.
thing that happened,
Yeah.
because that part really has me pushing that down on the list too.
Actually, if you
So I
listen
shouldn't
to our
have any
previous
hard
conversation,
object to throw at the television while I'm watching that. But it also seems, because of Discovery, they're attempting to retcon what Starfleet is in the Picard show to justify the crap that they're coming up with for Discovery.
Oh, I like that.
So-
I like that. Yeah. I'll go with that logic.
I mean, that's
Because if there's one thing that I've noticed in recent Star Trek offerings, is there's a lot of politics, a lot of wokeism that's being threaded through and changing the tapestry of really what Star Trek is.
so.
And totally agree there.
And this is something that you and I talked about before, Rob, Star Trek has always dealt with politics and racism, the issues of the day. What they're doing now is they're basically taking a, brick-filled bag and slapping you in the face with it, as opposed to the nuanced way that Gene Roddenberry started out with.
Yep,
And that's
absolutely.
That's one of the big reasons that why I love my older shows as opposed to a lot of the newer stuff that they have today.
All right, so we're up to number 6. Michael, who you got?
I got to throw Voyager in there. For most of the series was interesting. It was compelling that they were lost in the Delta Quadrant for so long, but the fact that they kept stumbling upon resources every week and then basically cheated the entire timeline with Janeway going into the past to help them keeping the entire series retroactively for me.
All right.
In almost the same way as the ending of Enterprise did for that show. It's like when you're drinking a cup of coffee and you get to the bottom and there's coffee grounds and you get coffee grounds in your mouth. It not only ruins that sip of coffee, it ruins that entire cup for you retroactively. Or at least for me. I don't know. Maybe that's just my metaphor.
The coffee is the finest suspension in the galaxy.
Yes.
All right, Steven, what you got for number 6?
For me, it was Enterprise. And Michael and I had this conversation quite a bit when I finally got into it, because I've had a very hard time getting into it. Thank you, Michael, for pushing me to finally watch it all. But like I said, they overused the time travel thing. The ending. When I got to that, like, at first I got to that episode and I was like, this is a really, really strange episode to put in here. And then I found out that was the end of the series. And I'm like, that's how you end this? Are you kidding me? And I mean, that right there, like, all that work I'd done and actually finally watching the show and finding out that it was a really good show. And then that's how they end it. And I wanted to strangle somebody. I was like, no, that is not how you end this.
Yeah, part of me wants to. I don't want to give them a free pass, but I do want to. I always try to justify at least some of that, because that wouldn't have been a finale in any other series. That would have been some random middle of the season. We're about to go on hiatus, for the holidays or something type of episode, right? One of those nostalgia episodes.
Or even we don't really have a good cliffhanger idea.
Exactly. But I think that part of what happened there was, they were told, hey, you guys aren't getting a 5th season, so you guys better wrap this up now. And they were thinking, oh shit, what do we do now?
I mean, they missed out on one of the biggest opportunities that they'd been hinting at the entire time, which was Jonathan Archer's speech at the formation of the United Federation of Planets. And they completely do nothing with it. It's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. I mean, that would have made the reasonable series finale if they had been able to go, like every other series, to 7 seasons.
So,
because you could have worked that into the timeline better.
I think maybe one of the problems with the speech, is even back then, I don't know anyone who could have written something like that, because the way they built it up, it is a speech that really set the tone for what the Federation became. And to be able to do that, you have to have an understanding of the dynamics, not only of Star Trek, but just of societies in general. And I think in what was becoming the woke community, they have no understanding of those concepts. So we might be better off them not doing the speech. I don't know.
It doesn't make it any less disappointing, though.
No. I'm not saying that. It sucks.
All right, Rob, your turn.
My number 6 is Voyager. And because the first 3 years of that show, you had a pedophile on board and nobody said a damn thing about it.
Huh?
Neelix was a pedophile.
Kes was only 3.
Exactly. She was only like 2 when they got picked up by the ship.
Oh, that's
and
right.
They were already like all into each other. I mean, Neelix was a pedophile. Harry Kim is the least interesting character ever. Tom Paris is Nicholas Locarno, just with a different name because of copyrights. And I'm sorry, I'm all for women being equally represented and women doing the jobs of men, but don't sell me this bullshit that Captain Catherine Janeway is one of the greatest captains in Starfleet history. The bitch is a murderer. Okay, she's a stone cold killer who rewrote the book claiming that she was using her, Federation morality. that series did not get good until season 4 when, oh, what happened in season 4? That's right. We got perfection injected into the show. We had a reason to watch in season 4. And Kate Mulgrew and Captain Janeway shit on Jerry Ryan in 7 of 9 all the time for no reason other than, wow, she's hot. And she's like undoing all of this hard work for women I was doing. No, she was giving people a reason to watch and actually be somewhat entertained. I mean, her and the Doctor, that relationship was fun to watch. And the way that series ended with the, oh, hey, look, Admiral Janeway from the future comes in and gets Voyager home, all because she has a guilty conscience about Chakotay dying, Tuvok having, a Vulcan disease and going insane. I mean, and it relied too much on the same type of tropes that had already been previously established. You brought Q into it. You had a baby with Q. I mean, if William Riker from the Enterprise can make an appearance in the Delta Quadrant, there's something wrong with your series.
I mean,
too much, too strong?
Oh no, there's numerous criticisms of the entire series. Underutilizations, people that just ought not have appeared. Like Q, for instance, the fact that he's even aware of Voyager and not bring them home. I know that it says nothing about the character of Q himself, because he wouldn't unless there was something in it for him. But not even to entertain the idea.
Yeah,
I don't know. There's a lot of frustrating points.
Well, I mean, as far as Q goes, exactly like you said, Q did things for his purposes, and the number one thing that he did was he was about teaching his human pets, his human fascinations, right? He flung the Enterprise, a couple thousand light years away to introduce them to the Borg, to teach them, you guys aren't as ready as you think you are, and only brought them back when he got that acknowledgement from Picard. And that's the same thing I see about when he showed up on Voyager. I mean, obviously, the Q Continuum would have been completely aware of it, but what does it teach humanity if the omnipresent beings that can do pretty much anything they want just say, oh, you guys are lost out here, cut off from everybody else? Oh, that's okay. We'll bring you back. It teaches them nothing. Right?
Well, I think that he didn't he offer to, at least get them closer to home, or actually send them all the way home if Catherine had just decided to make a baby with them?
I think that was part of the bargain. And I do remember him moving them, I think it was like 10 years.
Yeah. I know that there was
Something
some
like
sort of
that.
trade-off. Yeah. I mean, if you're Captain Janeway and you're all consuming only purpose in life is to get your crew home, wouldn't you have just taken one for the team? I mean, I know that John Delancey is a brony and all that, but come on.
Yeah, but that also would have ended the series.
Well, you could have saved that for season 7. But the fact that they brought him in a few different times. I mean, Q made one appearance on DS9, got punched in the face, and was gone for the rest of the time.
Which is why he only made one appearance on Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, but at that point, I mean, Q had been like that big baddie, that character that really shined on TNG. And I know that, we're going to cross some characters over, blah, 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 blah. But I think that you hit the point with the law of diminishing returns on Q by the time that, that stuff wrapped up on Voyager. And him coming back for season 2 of Picard, I'm thrilled about that because the chemistry between those two has always been really good. So I hope I get to see the Q that I knew and actually enjoyed.
Let's see, why are you going to bring that up? Because now you're going to make me want to actually watch Picard season 2, and I was dead set on having nothing to do with it.
Q's the only reason. That is the only reason why I'm even entertaining the thought of watching Picard season 2. All right, so we're halfway. Who you got for number 5?
Number 5, I haven't mentioned Deep Space Nine yet, have I?
No.
Steven, I hope you're taking notes on these.
I am.
Yeah, I really, because I know I'm going to forget how many, what I've picked so far. But Deep Space Nine, I have, that's my wife and I's favorite one to watch together because it is kind of a soap opera. And I have other issues with the show. So the whole issue with the symbionts and I don't know, the thing with Odo going home when he'd never really known anything about his own people, and the fact that he spent the entire series purposely putting himself into an outcast sort of position. I don't know. It was a little frustrating for me that there wasn't more character in his decision, like to leave and go to his people, even though they needed his guidance. And then the overarching criticalness of theology, I think. There's that metaphorical undertone of skepticism and not belittling, but just
I'm with you. The antagonistic relationship with theology.
Yes.
But I will say, they did kind of redeem themselves there because you had Cisco, who was just dead set against all of it, fully embrace his role as the emissary by the end of the series. But I mean, but everything else that you're saying, yeah, I mean, I'm totally on board with you on it. What else you got on that?
That's really it. I mean, other than there's plenty of good parts, except for that video game they got trapped in. That haunts me still.
Ala Moraine, count 2, 4. Ala Moraine, think 3 more.
Right. That echoes in my head at night. That thing. But there's plenty of awkward parts. There's that. There's the one where they're writing a science fiction magazine in the 30s. That one kind of, I mean, I understand what they were, I understand the story they were telling. I didn't know why they needed to tell it, I guess. But then Worf's story arc was really good. Still want to know where the Sword of Kalis is, kind of out there somewhere. But it has, I would say, 75% really good stories.
And the Dominion War arc, right? I mean, come on.
Yes, absolutely. And
I think I just triggered Steven there.
The fact that they, the fact,
one of the things I was saying earlier about
destroyed the Defiant, that was bold. I mean, when they introduced that, I was like, yes, finally a fighting ship. And then, what was it? 8, 9 episodes later, it's destroyed.
Yeah, they did some interesting things with the Defiant. I will definitely say that. All right, Steven, what you got for number 5?
My number 5 is Picard.
Okay.
So,
You got it ranked
Like I
higher than I do.
I mean, well, like I said, for me, it was a really good look at what do you do when everything that you hold true and dear isn't held true and dear by those you associated with anymore. You know, what lengths are you willing to go to when something comes up and, you know, the people that you used to count on aren't there anymore. So,
I also find it to be a cautionary tale of writing a series, planning on it being one thing, and then having the network and the studio tell you it's going to be something more.
very much so. Again, I'm not trying to put any
No
spoilers for Mike,
no spoilers.
but that ending was a very, very, very big down point for me. I did enjoy all of the characters that showed up. Again, trying not to
I don't know. I was
name
kind
a lot of names.
I was depressed with one of them, just because. Oh, I mean, that ruined my entire adolescent view of one particular actress. Which, I mean, I understand. Time happens. People get old, and people, you know. But damn,
Yeah.
that was rough.
Yeah,
I mean,
she did not age well.
Yeah, I mean, that's what happens when you're just a hate-mongering leftist.
I mean, it is what it is, but I mean, I thought it was a very well told story with a, you know, bad ending. And that's pretty much why I've got it ranked right around there with Enterprise. You know, Enterprise, I think, used way too many crutches to get through it. Picard didn't quite use as many. Had some really good characters pop in, and just had a bad ending so that they could work around the idea of, oh, we're not ending here. So, I mean, with what you're saying about season 2, I might have to go ahead and watch that just to see if they recover themselves from it.
Fair enough. My number 5, you know, it's been a long road getting from there to here. It's been a long time, but my time is finally near. That's right. The ship that had the long road getting from there to here, Enterprise. And if I had been making this list when that series was running, it would have been at the very bottom, buried 6 feet underground with concrete, dirt, wood, ash, body parts of its cast. It would have been just nasty buried. But with, you know, time, it has actually grown on me to be really not that bad when you have to take certain things out of it to make it really stand out as a good series. But by comparison to what is out there now, it actually is a decent and pretty good series. The Xindi story arc in season 3, I thought that was really good because you had the series was already going to be pigeonholed in terms of, oh, it's a prequel to everything that we already know. So introducing anything new that had never been mentioned before had to be handled with a whole lot of tact. And I thought that the Xindi story arc, they did a really good job with it. I like the fan theory out there right now about that probe in Star Trek 4, you know, the one with the whales, actually being a Xindi probe. A Xindi aquatic probe.
That's actually plausible considering the Xindi aquatics.
Exactly. So there's, you know, being able to figure out, I mean, of course, uber mega nerds are the only ones that can come up with that theory and actually have it stick. But, you know, I saw that and I'm thinking, you know, that could happen. So, you know, I'm willing to go along with that fan theory. But, you know, I thought the series was decent for what it tried to do in terms of establish the very beginnings Starfleet and humans in space, the exploration. I thought that the cast, once they were able to spread their legs a little bit and actually fit their characters, I thought that they were a pretty decent cast that had some pretty good chemistry between a few of them. I will not say one cross word about T'Pol at all. I'm very grateful for her time on the show.
Probably one of the best new Vulcans since Saavik.
Yeah, I thought that she was one that, I at first when they said, "Oh, look, it's a Vulcan on a human ship," I'm thinking, really? Come on. We've already done this. In fact, Spock was supposed to be the first one. So why are we doing this? Oh, this predates the Federation. It doesn't count. Oh, okay. But still, I mean, I was thinking, are we really doing this? But it turned out to be a really good choice. I thought that, seeing them stumble a lot in terms of, hey, we're ready to go, and then you get your ass kicked time and time and time again. So it's not like, this itty bitty little ship called Enterprise was able to just go toe to toe with the Klingons right out of the gate, or go up against the Romulans right out of the gate and be superior in any way, shape, or form. I didn't care much for bringing the Ferengi into it. I thought that was going back to the well a little too much. But the character of Shran, the Andorians, you never got to see a whole lot of the Andorians in any other iteration of Star Trek. So I thought that was a really cool addition. And yes. Jeffrey Combs. What can you say about Jeffrey Combs other than the man is freaking awesome in every role that he's in? And he holds the record for being.
For him, I saw him everywhere.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, he's in a lot of stuff that you wouldn't even really recognize him. And in fact, I don't recognize him without character makeup on.
Right.
But I thought he was a great addition to the series. He holds the record for the most characters portrayed in Star Trek, period. other than James Doohan, but that was voice work for the animated series, not the same thing. Actually portraying characters. So Enterprise is my number 5. So we're in the top half. What's number 4?
So one other thing I wanted to mention, that with Enterprise, just telling the history, the fact that they walked into that temple with the Vulcans just lying their butts off about what they were doing there was a huge curveball. And I know you did not see that coming at all.
Yeah, because Vulcans don't lie.
No, of course not.
Wrong.
But Spock said, I'm a Vulcan. I'm incapable of lying.
And that's something that gets proven wrong time after time after time
but
in Star
Spock
Trek. It's
said it.
It doesn't matter. It's not that they're incapable. It's that there's no logic behind it. When there's logic behind it, they are completely capable of lying.
And showing that that one sect of Vulcans that still embraced their emotions and things like that, I thought that was pretty creative. The thing I didn't like was the fact that the mind meld is like taboo on Enterprise, but at the same time I'm thinking, well, this is 100 years before, so maybe it still was.
But in the meantime, Tuvok is over on Voyager doing it like every other episode.
Yeah, exactly.
The mind meld. That's one of the things that my wife mentioned. Like, it's like that's the one thing he can do.
Yes, that was the one thing he could do. And even then, I think there was one time where he screwed it up with Kes.
Yes.
All right, so Michael, what you got for number 4?
Have I mentioned Picard yet? Because I think number 4, with an asterisk, is Picard. Because so far, I kind of like how it's going. I don't know what's coming, so don't tell me. I do have this unfortunate ability to discover information through the barest threads of clues. So I knew some of Jerry Ryan's arc, and I know that Riker and Troy come back in their walkers, and that's about it.
Walkers.
I deliberately tried to avoid information because I piece things together really easily, and that's so far all I know about the upcoming episodes.
All right, fair enough. So subject to change with the asterisk. I like that.
Yes.
All right. So for me, number 4 is Lower Decks. So I mean, this is probably the only new Trek that's come out that I was like, oh my God, it's fun. It's Trek. And it explores something that, was started in The Next Generation. Because time after time after time, you see everything that the command crew is doing. You see what all the senior officers are doing. And every now and then you got a JO that shows up and helps out in their weird, quirky way. And then half the time you never see them again. So to see something from the perspective of the junior officers, from the perspective of the least interesting ship in the fleet, and I mean, it's a lot of fun. It's definitely Trek, and I think it is one of the best things to come out since J.J. Abrams got a hold of this series. So, I mean, it's definitely not the best, but it's something that gives me hope that, despite the damage that they are doing, we might still be able to enjoy good Trek in the future.
All right. Number 4 for me was also Lower Decks. And for a lot of the same reasons that you just gave, Stephen. For me, it's funny how one episode of TNG can lead to an entire series because of, like you mentioned, that one episode called Lower Decks, where you had the 4 ensigns running around. The thing I really enjoy about Lower Decks is the fact that they don't take themselves too seriously. They don't take the series too seriously. They drop Easter eggs and callbacks and little nostalgia hits all throughout the series. There's a statue of Chief O'Brien saying the most important man in Starfleet history.
Yes.
They even did a callback to the Riker transporter accident.
Yes.
They had, then you had one of the main characters referring to Captain Jellicoe. I don't need no babysitting Jellicoe type. I mean, that's just awesome. You have just like I said, a quirky, not too serious. It's funny. It's great, digestible TV. The chief medical officer is a cat, for crying out loud.
Yes.
So
that entire episode.
And
I could care less about the statue. I just wanted the box.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm thinking that is every freaking cat I've ever known. Like in my house, we have to keep some open boxes laying around because the cats are obsessed with them. And it looks strange to be walking through part of the house and see this empty box. And I'm thinking, I really should break that box down and take it outside. But then I look inside of it, there's a cat. I'm thinking, okay, I'm just going to let the cat do its thing, So, and the fact that the series was created by one of the guys from Rick and Morty. Rick and Morty is a funny show as well. So Lower Decks really scratches my itch for Trek that is fun, lighthearted, episodic. So I don't have to sit there and binge it to understand what the heck's going on from week to week. It's all self-contained. It's only 22 minutes. So I'm down. I'm cool with it. Or, 22, 25 or 30 minutes. It's right in that sweet spot without the ads and everything. It's great. Michael, you got anything on that one? Are you good? Are you ready for number 3?
I have yet to. I haven't seen Lower Decks, but you guys make it sound awesome. And irreverent. That's my wheelhouse. Irreverent humor. And
I mean, you have a character who loves going to the break.
Quick moving.
So what's your number 3? Top 3.
Number 3, though, I think I've lost my place. I know what my number 2 and number 1 are, but I feel like I've already mentioned all the rest of the shows.
I'll say I was surprised at what you just said about Lower Decks because I don't see Lower Decks on your list anywhere.
Oh, have you been writing them down?
Yes, I have.
Okay, good. So. Well, let's put that at number 3 then, also with an asterisk.
You know what?
Because,
you know what I think?
I've heard
I think
a lot of good things about it.
I was gonna say I think he may have had Lower Decks down there at the bottom just because he hadn't seen it, but I will trust your list making.
So, well, I mean, that was like the big reason why he had STD at number 9 was because he hadn't seen it, but the things he'd heard about it.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, then Lower Decks is his number 3.
And let's leave it at that. And I have some homework to do.
Yes, you do. And luckily, I mean, it's only like, 10 episodes or 12 episodes a season. So
something like that. So Paramount Plus.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I downloaded Paramount Plus on our Fire Stick, and my wife goes, "Wait a minute, you're getting Paramount too?" I'm like, "When did you get Paramount?" And she's like, "I did that like 2 months ago." I'm like, she could have told me, and I could have had all this homework already done. And anyway, not helpful.
All right. So now we're at Rob, number 3.
What was your number 3? Did I just miss it? Steven, you're number 3.
Oh, right. I've already got my list for it now. That's why I got confused. My number 3 is Voyager. So, I mean, it was for me, like Deep Space Nine had the great idea of being other than going everywhere. It was a twist on the Trek that we knew. And that was one thing that really drew me in about Voyager was it was the same ideal as what Trek was, but we did it with throwing them in a completely unexplored part of the galaxy. And what do you do when you have to get home? Right? So, I personally, for that situation, I thought Janeway was a great captain. I don't know that she would have been one of the best of Starfleet had she stayed in the Alpha Quadrant. But definitely for that situation, I thought she did extremely well. Pretty much the main complaints I have about that series are, how in the hell do you go 7 seasons without promoting one of the most important people on the bridge?
It became a trope.
It
like
did.
They even mentioned it in series.
But I mean, at some point, you just got to give him lieutenant, just because it makes no sense for him to be an ensign anymore. Hell,
I mean, she promoted and demoted other members of the crew. Why not Harry
and
Kim?
Re-promoted?
Exactly.
So, and then, I mean, even once you get to the end of the series, everybody else is retired and he's still only a captain. So, I mean, that was kind of downer. The thing you mentioned about the Janeway's time travel at the end and how you were just kind of like, not so much. I didn't like that. For me, it worked mainly because you spend 7 years trying to do everything by the book. And it like that was a breaking point for her where it's like, you know what? I played by the rules and look what it got me on this one point. I'm going to do what I have to do.
And how about the Doctor being married to a Skinamax actress in that series finale?
Hey, I mean, holograms are people too, man. I'm not gonna. So, I mean that was one of the things. That was probably one of the biggest laugh moments of the entire series that I had, for the very same reason that Paris did. 23 years and the best you can come up with is Joe.
Yeah.
That was one of the things for bits of the series was, what is the Doctor going to call himself other than the Doctor? And so 7 years later, we've got Joe the Doctor.
Joe the Doctor. Yep, that's true. I think he could have done better than Joe too, but
most definitely. But I mean,
it definitely fit the. It definitely hit the punchline though.
It did, but for me, overall, it was a great series that allowed Trek to be what it was from a different direction.
All right, I can go along with that. My number 3 is DS9, for the reasons that it was set. It was set differently, had a different tone, different aura. It showed a lot of the imperfections of the future society that Gene Roddenberry had set out. It wasn't perfect by any means. You had Quark redeem the entire Ferengi race because their initial portrayal in TNG was atrocious.
Oh my God.
I liked having the large ensemble cast. Garrick was supposed to be a one-off character, but he ended up being, one of those guys that you couldn't live without. Plain simple Garrick. The way that they were able to bring Worf into the fold without making it seem totally unnatural and just shoehorning a TNG guy into DS9, I thought was brilliant. The Dominion War story arc was great. DS9 really serves as, it really became the template for what Netflix is today in terms of your binge-worthy, watchable TV shows. And the fact that it was the first Trek series that really dealt with long story arcs rather than the self-contained bad guy of the week type stories. I thought that was really great. You were able to do a whole lot more character development as well. So I thought that was really good about the series. My only beef with the series was the handling of Terry Farrell at the end of season 6, going so far as to kill her and recast Dax because, she wanted to go and do other things. She only wanted to be a recurring character, not a main. Well, we're just going to kill you. All because they didn't want to pay her. She was worth the money. Whatever she wanted, they should have just given it to her. So, but I thought that
as
overall,
opposed to other characters they killed.
Exactly. But I like the fact that you didn't focus on just this one tiny clique. You had stories that diverted off the main cast, and you had the magnificent Ferengi who, were rescuing Quark's mom. You had episodes that dealt with the episode Valiant. I thought was really good because it focused on Nog and Jake running into this crew of cadets who were in way over their heads and the poor decision making they made. Overall, I thought it was just a really good series. After season 3, I thought the show really hit its stride and became worthy of, number 3 on my list.
You mean when Avery Brooks shaved his head and grew a goatee?
Yes. That's when
it got good.
Yeah, and when Rick Berman stopped micromanaging that show and let Ira Stephen Bear and Ronald D. Moore handle it.
So, I will say, and I've still only gotten a few episodes into season 7, but as much as we lament them getting rid of Terry Farrell, bringing in the Ezri Dax character did allow them to shape out more of the Trill stuff that had previously only been spoken about, right? Because we kept getting references to Curzon Dax, but we never really saw much of how things were when it was Curzon Dax and then Jadzia Dax. So being able to see, okay, we had Jadzia Dax and now we got Ezri Dax. The ability to shape out that part of the Trill side, as much as it sucked getting rid of Terry Farrell, it did give them that opportunity, which, is kind of good.
Kind of good.
Did anyone else follow her to Becker?
No. I mean, I watched a few episodes, but
yeah,
it wasn't my speed.
Insufferable show for me. No.
What show was this?
Becker.
Never heard of it.
That's the show that she actually left to go do.
Yeah.
Well, then
dancing.
You have more homework there.
Yes.
So
maybe have an open bottle next to you for that show, though.
Yeah, don't do that so much anymore. All right.
So
Number two. I suppose it's my turn. I'm putting number two, putting the original series at number two only because of the kind of nostalgia I have for The Next Generation. I grew up watching TNG, and there's a lot of great things about the original series, but it really wasn't given a chance to bloom on its own. And I think maybe that's one of the reasons the critics put the animated series so high, because they see that as the fulfillment of what the original series could have been. But the difficult situations that the crew were always put in, the Guardian of Forever, which hardly ever comes up again. I mean, why don't you use that in other? It comes up a couple times, but mostly
it comes up in New Trek.
Oh, does it? Oh.
Yeah. But continue. I'm not going to spoil. I'm not going to spoil anything.
No. I don't know. There'll have to be ice cream near me for the rest of this. I think for the. I don't know that I'll see Discovery. Maybe.
Save yourself.
At least
don't
for
do
Picard.
it.
Okay. But the original series established the tone for many of the movies and at least two of the series coming after it.
That's a fair assessment.
Very much so. And a lot of that is why I've got the original series at number two as well. It's a great series. But for me, I've got a lot of, I grew up with Next Generation. That's the series that I really fell in love with. I watched a lot of the reruns with my dad before Next Generation came out and even after. But for me, I thought, Next Generation was the better one. I mean, when you've got your main actor is a man who nowadays is the butt of a meme joke about creating a game called Shatner. And the game is somebody yells out Shatner, and whatever you're doing, you have to keep doing it, but now you have to overact it. So, but the original series laid the groundwork for what we are today. And it could have been so much more. A lot of that has to do with the studios never truly gave it a chance. They finally did give it. Somebody finally came around and said, you know what? Yeah, we'll do your show, and then the budget is practically nothing. And that's why you've got women running around wearing nothing half the time, not because Gene Roddenberry or somebody was a pervert, but because they didn't have a budget to work with.
But you say that like it's a bad thing.
No, not at all. I mean,
They did
anybody
use a lot of green paint.
They did use a lot of green paint. They used a lot of gauze. Thank God. So the original series could have been so much more, and had it actually been given the proper chance it should have, it very probably could be number 1 instead of number 2.
Very interesting, because my number 2 is actually TNG. And the reason that the original series is number 1 on my list is because a lot of the same things that you were just talking about. So on TNG, it's number 2 on my list because in terms of revitalizing and redirecting an entire franchise and actually serving as a springboard, you wouldn't have DS9, Voyager, Enterprise, and you wouldn't have New Trek without The Next Generation. If that show hadn't have hit when it did, how it did, and grew into the phenomenon that it became, Star Trek dies at that point. So in terms of being one of the most influential, I put TNG at number 2, but because it launched the entire franchise, I had to put the original series at number 1. It's a very small technicality.
I mean, you're not wrong, really.
Yeah. And to answer, I guess the way that I have the final 2 ranked, I mean, it answers the question: who do you like better, Kirk or Picard? Well, I put Kirk at number 1.
Well, I mean, they actually, if you ever watched Big Bang Theory, that was something that was brought up. It was a flashback episode when Leonard was first moving in, and Sheldon was quizzing him to determine if he was going to be a suitable roommate. And one of the questions was original Star Trek or Next Generation, and Leonard was like, well, original series over Next Generation, but Picard over Kirk. Or it might have been the other way around. I don't recall exactly, but he had one series over the other, but the opposite captain.
Yeah.
So, I mean, really, when you look at original series and Next Generation, I look at it as original series set the standard. Next Generation set the bar, right? Which I consider them to be two different things, right? The standard is the minimum. That's what you have to be this at least. Next Generation said, we're doing this. So, which a lot of it, again, goes into the chance that was given to each one, granted. But I mean, you can see the stark difference too. The original, the 3 seasons of the original series and what they did with what they had, and then when they started going into the movies, and just the quality in the movies when they were like, oh my God, people want more. They really want more, and they really started putting resources into the movies. Right, that's where for me the original series really hit it, was in the movies.
Yeah, but without that series, you would never have the greatest Star Trek movie made with the greatest villain ever created.
True.
Without the episodes, huh?
Star Trek 2.
Yeah.
I have a story about that. You guys, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, tell your story.
No, it's an aside.
All right. So, I mean, without Space Seed, you don't get introduced to Khan. Without Star Trek, the original series, you don't have the episode Space Seed. Without Space Seed, you don't get Star Trek 2. Without Star Trek 2, you don't get Star Trek 3, 4, 5, and 6. You don't get anything past that. So, because honestly, the motionless picture, the slow motion picture was, I mean, let's just face it, it was terrible. You know.
Yeah, I love
visually it was great. Visually it was great. Plot and
it never comes
time,
up again.
Exactly. The uniforms, terrible. So
yeah.
with Star Trek 2 introducing the new uniforms, introducing a new character, and Savick bringing back the character Khan,
introducing one of the biggest plot holes.
Which one is that? What plot hole? There's no plot hole.
What season did Space Seed come out?
Was it that one? Or was that 2?
Season 2.
Okay.
What season
are you talking
did we
about
meet Chekhov?
Chekhov.
Oh. Okay, look.
Let me fill that plot hole for you.
How do you remember a face that you never saw?
Who says he didn't see him?
If
So he had
Chekhov
the
wasn't
run
on
of
the
the ship for.
All right, Michael, plug this plot hole. Come on now.
Well, I'm just saying not everybody gets to be on the bridge. He might have been part of the crew, down in stellar cartography or something, and ran into Khan while he was taking over the ship.
I mean, there's a whole series based on characters like this. It's called Lower Decks, where you get the nameless, faceless people involved. So come on now. I mean, yes, that is, and that the funny thing is that scene was actually, that whole story arc for Chekhov was actually written for Sulu, which is why you see Sulu captaining the Excelsior in Star Trek 6. It was originally supposed to be Sulu playing the part that Chekhov did in Star Trek 2. But can you imagine, having Sulu there being lifted up by Khan while interrogating him? Oh my, Khan, what are you doing here?
Michael brings up a fairly good point, but in all honesty, what do you think the chances are that Khan met all 200 crew members during the short time he was on the Enterprise?
Well, wasn't he stuffing them into like holding cells and recreational areas?
And he happened
and Khan
to
seemed like a very hands-on, and with his super eyes and super strength, probably just plucked him out of the crowd. Maybe. I'm not buying it though. Come on now. I mean,
he might have even gone through the crew manifest and just saw a picture of him.
There you go.
In which case, how would Chekhov have enough memory of him other than?
Oh, that's true.
Because the way that they were going on in Star Trek 2, they actually had interaction with each other previously. If it was just glancing moments, there wouldn't have been enough there for the interaction that they had in Star Trek 2.
Yeah, but Chekhov was more painting with broad strokes in terms of, Captain Kirk was your host. You repaid his generosity. You're trying to steal his ship and murder him. I mean, that's basic common knowledge.
In the report.
Yeah, see, it's in the report.
You can try and justify it all you want. I'm not buying it.
But I think one thing we can all agree on: Star Trek 2, Into Darkness.
Oh my God, that abomination! The initial 2009, the 2009 Star Trek, when they brought that out, I was like, okay, maybe, but we'll give it a shot. Right? Like it was a decent, it was kind of plausible as well, the way they went about it. right? I didn't like the making up of red matter, but I was like, okay, they're trying to find some way to justify doing an alternate timeline thing. So I gave them a pass on that, and the 2009 Star Trek was actually a fairly decent story, even if it was scientifically completely wrong. The moment Into Darkness came out, that ended it right there. I mean, Bendy Lick Cucumber Patch, quite possibly one of the worst people they could have cast for Khan. He is not. He does not have the temperament for Khan at all.
He was a great John Harrison. Terrible Khan.
Yes.
That's my problem, is that if you had kept this character, John Harrison, okay.
And they completely eliminated the entire Space Siege story that even prompted him to be the way he was at that point. Other than the fact of, his reign on Earth being overthrown and them being shoved into stasis and sent out, everything else that motivated Khan at that point was gone. Mm-hmm. So it made no sense whatsoever.
So, Michael, what's your aside story?
Okay, so it's no longer an aside. When they started doing these, I made my wife. I encouraged my wife to watch the motion picture, and then Star Trek II, and then when we got to Star Trek Into Darkness, and it turned out that they were just flipping the story for Star Trek II, I had no idea. It was inconceivable to me that they would take the best movie of the entire series and use it in such a way. My wife somehow saw it coming, and now we can't go to Star Trek movies together or watch the show together because she will bring that up every single time. Like, you lied to me and said that this was going to be a new thing, and it turned out it was just you made me watch Star Trek 2 and then made me watch the Mirror Universe version of Star Trek 2.
A Mirror Universe version of Star Trek 2 would have been even better. This wasn't even close to Mirror Universe.
True. No.
Oh, man. So, but I think out of all, well, actually, I don't think based on comments from you guys, but definitely the one movie out of them all that I hated the most was Star Trek V.
Okay, come on. That's low-hanging fruit. Everybody hates Star Trek V.
Yeah, but it's a definitely better pick than the motion picture. The motion picture was, it was a great one-off movie, which is what it was. And then when you take it in the context of the other ones where it actually evolves into a linear storyline, Star Trek V does not fit.
I think that Kirk had a good ideas about that. I think that the studios and budget and overambitiousness really killed that for him. But it really almost did derail the entire franchise at the same time. So that part sucked.
Very much. The whole thing really sucked. It took the number one question that humanity has, which, the motion picture addressed beautifully. Is this all that I am? Is there nothing more? Star Trek, the motion picture, addressed it beautifully, and then they pretty much bring that up again, right? Because who's the one being of all that you would expect to get an answer like that from? God. And so they take that very same question and then ram us in the throat with some being who's going to, pretend to be us so he can escape a planet.
We covered the spectrum, right?
Pretty much.
I believe so.
Because
So,
once we hit 2, everybody just started giving their 1 and 2 right there at the same time. So
I mean, at
almost
that
happened.
point, once you give number 2, you know what number 1 is. If
exactly,
you've
yeah.
been
It's like,
following it. So
yeah, the drum roll was not necessary this time around. So,
pretty much. So
all right. Well, hey guys, I appreciate the time. We'll get together and we'll do this again. And we'll find something else to rank and review.
hey, we got a bunch of movies to do.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we got to go through because we actually started that, but I don't want to get too far into that.
We touched it. We haven't actually
Yeah.
really ranked anything other than our feelings on the worst. But
All right, we will reconvene for the movies in a couple of weeks. How's that sound?
yeah,
All right,
So-
Michael. Next time, make sure you're at a computer so we can actually get you on camera and chit chat instead of using
That would
Skype.
probably be a good idea.
all right. Well,
All right,
thanks for
guys.
having me.
Appreciate it.
I appreciate y'all listening and giving the feedback on Twitter and everything, and I really hope that we can keep this thing going. If you would, tell 3 people that you know about this show so they can check it out. Who knows, maybe they'll like it, maybe they'll hate you for recommending it. You never know. Special thanks to my wife and producer, Nikki. You can follow her on Twitter at DFW Radio Girly. And Ryoga, the special derpy cat, the executive producer of TV's Rob is Unwoke. You can follow him on Twitter at Cat Ryoga. He's currently sleeping on a printer. You can see that online. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at TV's Rob Official. That's right. I'm TV's Rob. This is TV's Rob is Unwoke. We'll catch you next time.